Alright guys, it's Burt from Soft Tubes and it's another movie review and it's the last one for this week in this movie review. Don't know what I'm doing, but it's Brightburn. Basically, Brightburn is essentially the story of what if Superman was evil. But with original characters and produced by James Gunn, who many of you will know from things like Guardians of the Galaxy. But basically, straight up, we're going to have to acknowledge the simple fact. This core concept of what if Superman was evil is not particularly original at all, basically. Because alternate versions of Superman are kind of a dime a dozen at this point. Like, literally there is almost every version of Superman you can imagine, and they come from all places of DC and Marvel and pretty much anyone else who's ever made comics and superheroes. Like, Superman is such an atypical superhero. Atypical's not what I meant. He's such a typical, like, key, archetypal, that's what I meant to say, archetypal, not atypical, it's very different, archetypal superhero, that doing different versions of him is pretty common. It's just kind of how things work. So, and I mean, just looking at DC, they've done versions of Superman where he's been like he's been with the USSR, he's been a Nazi, he's been like, he's worked for Darkseid, been with Darkseid, like things like that. Like, they've done pretty much everything, and even like the horror element is not particularly new, because in some of the, not necessarily straight horror, as far as I'm aware, but in some of his versions, there's horror elements kind of weaved into it at the very least. So, but saying all that, it's not something we've really seen on film before, so this is where it actually kind of can be original. And Brightburn does kind of find a way to work within that boundary of what it can be as an original thing. So, for me, Brightburn found itself working best as more of a foreboding, tension-building type of a film, rather than a straight-up horror. So, there's several jump scares in the film. They appear at different points, and, it's typical China jump scare thing. Thing was, I didn't get affected by any of them. Which may not sound like much, except anyone who knows me will know that I get affected by jump scares pretty easy. Like, if there is a movie that's not even a horror, but there's a jump moment, I will probably jump, because I am really bad at that stuff. Literally, the only other movie that I haven't jumped to jump scares before this was, I believe, the last Paranormal Activity movie, because they were so obvious. And here, they just didn't get to me. But part of it works from that, because the jump scares aren't, for me, the real scares of the film anyway, so they aren't necessarily the worst thing that they didn't work for me. Really, for me, the horror comes from the fact that you're watching events unfold in front of you on the screen, knowing that if a character says the wrong thing or does the wrong thing, goes down the wrong path, they're probably going to be met with a grisly fate. You're seeing these really tense kind of scenes outplay, which they're not necessarily always the most amazing, things of tension, but you're watching these things involved with people are, from the best of their knowledge, pushing, on a child, a certain way of being and what they think is perfectly fine. You're it's good to tell a kid to do a good thing, not knowing that this kid is basically indestructible super god man. So, they don't know, and you're watching this happen and going, oh god, don't do this, back off, you don't want to be going down there, but you have to watch it unfold because you have no control. That's kind of what the horror of this film is. It's more of that rather than a blah kind of moment. So, they actually do some good blocking of scenes in this film where they take what we know of Superman and his powers, super speed and heat eyes or laser eyes and super strength and things like that, and block scenes in a way to try and make those more of the foreboding horror elements. They're not particularly unique, but they are a way of doing those powers in a horror way, which kind of works within the thing. It never reaches the heights that it should, and it never goes anywhere near as unexpected as it should, given that all these tools it has at its disposal. has all these superpowers, and it never quite goes a direction that you don't see coming, which is really disappointing, because you could do some pretty crazy stuff with what they could have done there. And this comes to my biggest issue with the film, and I already sort of started getting at it with the jump scares thing, and they're not getting me, is the marketing was actually my biggest problem with the film. Not the film itself, but the marketing around it. So, perhaps I would have been more scared by the jump scares and other moments if those scares hadn't been ruined for me by the trailers. I don't know whether a lot of you have seen the trailers as such, but they don't necessarily ruin the scare itself, but they ruin the moments leading up to. And pretty much every moment leading up to the scares in this film are in those trailers. So when I'm watching this movie, things start happening and I'm like, oh, I recognize this. Oh, this is leading to this thing. Oh, I see what's going to happen here. And it's a really underwhelming way to feel about a film, especially a horror movie. You don't want to be feeling underwhelmed because you're like, oh, I see where this is going. Oh, yeah, that'll happen now. Because it led up to this. Because I saw the trailer that also showed this moment as separate, but it must be leading up from here. So that's going to happen to this person. Like, you don't want that. That's not how it should work. And it really sucked because, yeah, I was just like, oh, this is cool, I guess, but it wasn't hitting me the way it should have. There's a lot of gore in this film, and if gore hits you, you'll still be hit by that, because the gore isn't really in the trailers, except for one has a bit with an eye. But for me, that shock value isn't enough to make up for the fact that this film was undercut before I even got to see it. The friggin' beginning of the movie hadn't even rolled, and already it was on a back foot because of what it had already shown me. And that's a bad place to be. And I don't necessarily know whose fault it is for this. Whether it was simply the marketing guys were just like, throw all this together. Whether it was executives, whether it was the filmmakers had a bit too much say and didn't know what to do. But it does feel like at some point, whoever was doing this didn't exactly know how to sell the film, so they kind of sold it on too much. They tried to use too much of what it was to sell it, rather than focusing on some of the other moments to help build the tension of everything, and then having one or two of the scares in it. They should have built a tension trailer rather than a kind of like, look at all the things that are gonna happen kind of trailer. But all this being said, the special effects are pretty good throughout the film. There's probably only a moment or two that seem fake to me, and I don't even put that down to bad special effects. I put those more down to they're hard to do in a way to trick the human mind into accepting them as perfectly real. There are certain things that are really hard to make us go, oh yeah, I totally believe that, without going like, something seems off. And I think that's part of the issue there. Like, they probably look actually realistic, but our brains are so attuned to how we expect it to be, it's actually hard to trick it. And on top of that, like, I found the settings overall pretty good. They have a very Superman iconic kind of feel about them. It's very Smallville, kind of all that sort of stuff. We've seen it before, pretty much. And I actually liked a lot of that. But the only problem I had was that a lot of them were they were too dark. Essentially, like, pretty much every scare that took place in a setting, the setting was at night. And there's a couple of things I don't like about that. Partly, it makes things hard to look at in focus. It's hard to focus on moments or things or particular objects when everything's kind of just dark. And also, I feel like it's playing too much into the trope of dark is scary. I'm kind of scared of the dark. Like, I have things where I see shit and whatever. But I like the idea of, especially with a character like this. Like, this is Superman gone evil. And Superman is typically associated with day. He's always in light and things like that. And he's basically indestructible super god that you could have totally fucking taken him and made him do stuff in the day. Like, make the day terrifying because you cannot do anything about this kid coming to get you. But, I mean, his costume looks good, and it would have looked scary during the day as much as it did during the night. So why not do that? But I feel like the reason that it is a lot of night is because it wasn't a high-budget film, so they're trying to hide some of the special effects a little bit by using the darkness to their benefit. Which I understand, it's just disappointing. On to the acting. Elizabeth Banks performs pretty well as the adoptive mother. She's like, throughout the film, she's desperately trying to believe in the best in her son, even though there's evidence stacking up that maybe everything's not totally right. And she's the emotional core of this film and does really well in that position. I like Elizabeth Banks. I've enjoyed her in a lot of stuff. I don't think she's always the best at things, but she's damn solid, and she does a really solid job here, which I think is really good. I really enjoyed David Denman as the father, and especially the way that he's sort of dealing and struggling throughout the film because he has more of the struggle because he's becoming suspicious of the son, but he still wants to love the son, and he also wants to support his wife, but there's these suspicions building up and he can't ignore it, and I really liked him going through that. The only part that I didn't like with him was at some point the movie decided to make him the main character all of a sudden and give him these, and only for a short while. It's not like it's on these shifts. It's her for a long time is really the main character, and then suddenly the film goes, oh, he's going to be the main character for this little bit, and it'll sit with that, and then it suddenly shifts back. And it's just really odd. It doesn't ruin the movie, it just makes everything a bit clunkier than it had to be. It's really strange. But the key role of this film is Jackson Dunn as Brandon Breyer, the kid. And he's actually pretty damn good as a horrifying superchild. Like, I totally believed into the fact that this kid is this horrifying monster who's like, it's basically a kid who's discovered he can kind of get away with anything, and does. Even though there's some elements I didn't like about how they started sort of manipulating him to make evil happen, when I felt like they didn't have to. They could have been a bit cleverer. I do also wish they got away from the cliche creepy child kind of thing. But this is the thing, I don't blame Jackson Dunn for this at all. I don't blame him for the creepy child thing. I blame more the script, because that's kind of they positioned him in a way that he had to be the creepy child. It was the only way it was going to work, and it's probably completely scripted that way, that he's a creepy child. I think this is a character where you could have done, he's a monstrous thing, but he was like, maybe not the popular kid, but he's an accepted kid. He's not a bullied kid, because you take someone who's a little bit entitled or whatever, like everything, they got a little bit of privilege, everything's going pretty good, but then suddenly they find out, like, I can't be cut, like, I have super strength and these powers, like, I have all this. They will try and do some shit, especially as a child who doesn't understand consequences. Like, they could have really explored a lot of stuff of, like, up until a certain age, and until you really get taught it by life, you don't fully understand consequences from actions. And that could have been a really, really cool thing to explore, but that they never really get into. And I think Jackson Dunn would have been a good kid to do it with. I don't think, like, there's been a lot of really good child actors. He may not be amongst the top of those I've seen recently, but he's pretty damn good, and I think maybe he could have been better if they'd done that, but that's not the way they went. Ultimately, Brightburn isn't anything spectacularly frightful or original, but it is a solid film. It's made quite well, there's some good cinematography, the script is at least solid even if there are a couple of issues, the acting's pretty decent all the way through. It's a solid film. And in a way this is kind of an issue, there are hints at something greater that we never see, and especially in the final moments of the film, it hints at a sequel that may come at some point if it does well enough. It has a really interesting promise, lots of potential, but it kind of then makes this film feel like it's building to that. And then if that never happens, this film is a build to kind of nothing. But I will give the film that it has a somewhat original ending. It has a slightly unexpected ending, but it's not a sudden twist. It's nothing that you couldn't predict. So basically, Brightburn gets 3.5 stars out of 5 from me. It's alright. I think it's worth a watch. I'm going to try and see it again, hopefully on this weekend. Maybe my thoughts will change, because I was very upset with learning how much I'd learned from the trailers that I wish I didn't know beforehand. Maybe knowing how all that, I might be able to enjoy other elements of the film more. If it does sort of change how I feel, I'll do a little update on something to sort of change the score maybe, or at least like update my thoughts a little bit. But we'll see. Maybe nothing will change. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. If you saw Brightburn, have any thoughts of your own, let me know in the comments below. And tell you what, if there is a film you feel like I should watch, something that's already been out for a while or something, also let me know about that, because I'm thinking of doing a thing every so often. I'll watch an older film that maybe I haven't seen, or maybe rewatch a film I have and maybe do a little review on that. Because I have the thing of a lot of these films are going to be late reviews when they're new films anyway. A lot of it simply due to the fact that I live in Australia, that even an early screening of a film is kind of late in Australia. I really, really want to go see Booksmart. I've heard a lot of good things about Booksmart. I really want to see it and wanted to see it from the trailers. Unfortunately, it doesn't come out until the 11th of July here, so it's going to be way late, but there will be a review, because why the hell not? But it's going to be so super late that no one's going to care. So I might as well do some older ones while I'm at it, basically, at that point. But we'll see how things go. Also, if you like this video, you can hit the like button. If you didn't like it, you can hit the dislike button. And if you're new to the channel and you like movie stuff and game stuff and all that, I'm going to, at the moment, for a while now, it's been mostly all film related, just because it's kind of an easy groove, it's kind of working. I've kind of found a niche I can kind of work in here. Here's all the stuff, but if you like all that and you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, because then you can keep up on everything. And I tell you what, if you want to yell at me about something or suggest something, it's a good way to find a video where you can be like, blah, like, if, like, I think he's still being an idiot, and you can keep on every video, keep posting that I'm an idiot. It could be fun. I don't know. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. For that.
Go. Now some music. I do apologize. It gets so very hot here this time of year.
It's fine.
Where you feel like you could just about